Welcome. This is podcast number 3, the Business and Life podcast with Mathew and Ben.
Yep.
Today we are going to be talking about us and our background, our experiences, what we've done in life, how we've got to where we are, and our upbringing. So I think we said we'd start with our early childhood. So,
Yep.
Matthew, why don't you start with
Yeah,
your growing up?
I think personally, so I was born and raised in Spain in a city called San Sebastian, which is kind of like a bubble. It's literally like the perfect place to raise your child in. So like, no, very little crime. Next to the ocean, you've got mountains, you've got like good schools, you've got all the nice restaurants, you've got all the activities. And I didn't like if you're born there, you don't really appreciate it, right? So throughout my childhood, I guess some like a big event, at least for me, that happened was like the divorce of my parents, which obviously carried out some stuff that made me mature more or made me become a bit more ambitious. Because what you tend to do if your parents are divorced, you tend to compare yourself to like other kids. You tend to see what kind of consequences something like that can have in your life and the arguments they can hear and so on. So I would say that was one of the biggies.
What do you think so you think that had a positive or negative effect
Uh,
generally in your upbringing?
Positive. I mean, now positive now. At the time, it was like it sucked, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not like a nice experience. At the beginning, it was like okay because they didn't argue, but as time goes on, you do see that arguments and all that stuff going on, and it does create a bit of a ball, like something inside of you that makes you become a bit more ambitious. Um, and then you take it throughout life, right? So it's I think similar to how you're feeling right now, Ben, where you can't stop something that it's already inside you, like in terms of motivations, ambition, and so on. And I think I've carried that through my, I guess, adult life right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a family that was very strict on me performing very well, which conversely, I hear a lot of people who grew up in that environment end up sort of resenting that and go off and do something completely different. So my parents were very focused on I needed to get into the right school, get the right grades. If I didn't get the right grades, I was a failure. If I wasn't the best at this sport, I was a failure. And it was really focused on, being the best person I could be. And interestingly, it's kind of worked differently for my brother and and I know the rest of my extended family are very similar to that because my dad's brothers, my cousins, they're all the same. That's how they grew up as well. But we've all kind of turned out differently. So I guess it's maybe different genes and
Yep.
I don't know exactly, but
Yep.
for me, it I had a bit of a rebellion when I was in my mid-teens.
Uh-huh.
It's almost like I'm tired of being told what to do,
Yep.
tired of um, being told I'm not good enough, tired of them telling me that what they say is always the right way.
Mhm.
And I think when I started to almost talk back to my dad
Mhm.
about, you know what, I don't actually think you're right there.
Mhm.
And it came to a really important realization in my late teens where your parents aren't always right. And a lot of the time, on a lot of subjects, you actually know more than your parents. But it's very much like because you're so used to being a kid and being told by your parents that, oh, what you're doing is wrong, what I'm telling you is the right thing to do. As you grow up, you just expect that that is the way. But as you grow up, I felt, you know what, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be doing what I initially thought I should be doing. And there was a lot of conflict between me and my dad. And I think that was what caused a bit of a rebellion in my mid to late teens.
Okay.
I was never a particularly hard worker after I got into the top school I got into.
Uh-huh.
I never really revised. I never did any revision. I never worked hard to do my exams.
Uh-huh.
I think I'm fortunate in that I had a natural intelligence, but
Did that come?
when it came to
Did that come in like so you were like a good student until you realized that you had your own criteria of looking at things, and at that point,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, almost, and then it. I think it came to realization: what is the point of actually doing these exams? Like, what am I achieving here?
yeah,
What is having 95% in this exam got to do with what's going to happen in the real world?
yeah,
And I started to question these things when I was sort of 17, 18.
okay,
But there was also the other side of the coin where you have to do that because in Europe, at least, if you don't go to university, you don't get a job.
yeah,
And I think that's, in my opinion, a terrible way to sort of grow up, and a terrible thing to put teenagers through, because you don't need grades to be successful.
at all.
Anyone can tell you that.
Yeah.
And you realise that as you grow up, and you realise how actually pointless your entire degree was when you go into the real world.
Yeah,
But I had this realization when I was 17, 18, like, what am I doing? This is rubbish. But at the same time, I have to go to university. So I really started when I was 18, and I had a bit of a kick in the arse when I was 17 because my results weren't as good as I had expected and had in the past.
yeah,
I sort of breezed through a lot of school. And then in my sort of first year as a sort of senior, or I guess you were 17 years old at the time, my results weren't particularly good, and it was sort of the first realization that, hang on a minute, I actually need to do some work.
yeah,
And if I really want to achieve something, at this point in my life, I thought the only way to achieve something was to go to university, get a good degree, get a job. And I had in my mind already at that point in time, I wanted to be an investment analyst, and I wanted to work for one of the big asset managers, and I needed a good degree to do that. So
that's a good point. So you go from like being pretty strict, right, about your like education, discipline, and so on through your family mainly, to then figuring out like, oh shit, I've got my own criteria going on. I'm going to question pretty much everyone. To then figuring out exactly what you want, and then that having that same correlation to what you were being told by your parents, right? Because you hadn't seen a different model.
Exactly. It's very interesting, and I've thought about this a lot, because I think what they were telling me to do was fine. Like, they were telling me to work hard, the importance of getting into the school I got into, and to some extent that has helped me a lot in life.
Yeah.
But it's really helpful to come to your own realization at some point, and that's what happened when I was 18. I came to my own realization that actually where I want to be, I do need to work hard, and I do need to work hard at these things to get there. And my parents weren't telling me to do anything at that point in time, but it was my own personal sort of understanding and belief and drive and determination to do that. So
why do you feel that you've got the determination that you've got right now along your path towards becoming like an entrepreneur, acquiring companies? We can go into that later on. But what do you think made you get to that point?
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
Do you think it's like
an
innate character?
I think there's probably say again?
Do you think like it's an innate character, like something that you got inside of you, that it's just you?
Yeah, I think there's part of that, and then I think there's also a part that all my life, any kind of success has just been pushed down. I've never ever had any genuine encouragement all my life from family, and especially not from friends. And so whenever I've sort of tried to do something good, it's almost like that's not good enough. And so for me, I've had that instilled in my brain all my life. And so when I'm where I am now, I look at myself and I think what I'm accomplished is to a lot of people is fantastic, but to me, it's not good enough. And I think that's probably where it comes from, why I'm the way I am.
And I think
almost like a chip on my shoulder.
That's one of the things that makes you like really cool. And then also for yourself, like it's got the upside and the downside, right? So how do you mitigate? Like, how do you work around that? Because it's a tough place to be in, no? Like every single time you do something, it's not enough.
Yeah, I guess, like you said in the last podcast, there's that gap between where you want to be and where you are now, It's like that blissful gap. What did you call it?
Blissful dissatisfaction.
Yes, blissful dissatisfaction, and that's where I kind of am. I mean, I'm not unhappy when I achieve when something is achieved, but I'm also not. That's not the end for me,
Yeah,
and I know that I need to keep going because that's still not good enough,
yeah,
and I don't know when will be good enough. I don't know when I will be able to say
yeah,
it's good enough now. I feel like I'm where I want to be.
yeah.
Maybe what I'm looking for deep down is someone to say, "Hey, you've really accomplished something here. Congratulations, like you've done so well."
Do you,
Um,
do you think
but I
if you heard that from your parents, that would be like, hmm, that's a strange one. Let me actually think about it. Like,
yeah, I haven't, and I think even if I did, I would still continue doing what I'm doing now because I think the importance of growing up in that environment and your upbringing really defines you later in life. And so, whether I would be the way I am now if my parents hadn't brought me up the way I was and my friendship group hadn't ever given me the encouragement, and I don't know, but I know now that even if I did get that encouragement, even if someone did say, "Congratulations, Art, you've done amazing,"
yeah,
it wouldn't really affect me. I would still want to keep moving forward, keep progressing, keep getting bigger, keep doing, So
yeah,
yeah, it's a strange one. But
yeah, yeah. I mean, but
what about you? Do you feel like that? I mean, how what was your teens like? When did you have a sort of a switch where you went from
yeah,
not being a bit lazy to suddenly thinking, actually, I love what I do. I want to.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So from like literally from 1 to 18, I was kind of like the perfect student. Like I would always get pretty like very good marks at school. Always overachieve. Always really focus on what to do because I wanted to get to the goal of kind of I guess becoming successful, right? On those terms that I was being proposed by society or by parents or by my
Mm.
surroundings. And then what happened is I moved over to London, and then that's where I totally changed. So I went from being this really good student, that did everything right, to then realizing, holy shit! And apologies for for all the bad words here, but the I just came to the realization that this is worthless, and it's not worthless because it does give you credibility and it does uh, show that you're able to finish something. But outside of that, like all you've, it doesn't really like people don't really care about your degree. And that's when I started like being very interested in business. I realized that okay, I've got something innate, something around me that generate some kind of interest around business or the topic of it. So I would start reading books. I would start looking at projects, trying to build projects, doing a bit of marketing, doing outreach, like literally how you start out, right? Um, and I left uni on the side. So obviously, what happened was my marks went from like nine, tens, eight minimum to down to almost like failing at university, and that created like a lot of friction between my parents and myself, which obviously brought a lot of a lot of arguments at home, even almost like proper fights. And I've heard this, Conor McGregor on your end. Yeah,
Yes, yeah,
so he was having a lot of fights back with his dad when he was just being a punk, right, over in Ireland. And then once he
yeah,
started
yeah.
generating results in like business, in his business, he started getting like a bit better of a relationship. That same phase has happened with me. So going from like having fights to then bringing results home and then be like, oh shit, okay.
I think a lot of that is sort of parents and the older generation not understanding that, not even understanding entrepreneurialism.
Mm,
And I hear this a lot that friends and even myself, we take a different path. We start a business, and it's almost I've given up a very good job to start a business. I know other people have given up good jobs to start a business, and people are like, "That's so risky." But isn't that just a really risky thing to do? Well, it is somewhat risky, but in my eyes, there was never any doubt that I wasn't going to succeed. And you're not really, you've got one life.
Yep.
I believe you've got one life. You can live all your life working for someone
Yep.
and doing a job you're not particularly fond of, and you can look back when you're older and you're going to think, why did I spend all my life doing that? Why didn't I? And they say, people regret the things
Didn't do.
they didn't do, not the things they did. So,
Yeah.
and I think that I think of that a lot, and so I think it's important that I wanted to follow a career that I really enjoyed, and I think people that have and taken that risk, as people would call it, is a calculated risk, and
Yep.
you can't ever be successful without taking risks in life. There's no entrepreneur that never took a risk. There's no billionaire that never took a risk. There's no successful person that never took a risk. It's just not possible.
Yep.
And so as long as you've made a calculated risk,
Yep.
And even if you haven't, even if you just jump in the deep end,
Yep.
you've got to start somewhere. And I guarantee that person's going to end up better off because he's tried and he's gone out and taken those risks than someone who's just
Yep.
sort of going through the motions in life.
How do you feel? Like what criteria or what, like, I guess, items should you look at if you wanted to make that jump? So you could be earning a very good six figures as an investment banker, right, over in London right now.
Yeah.
But now you've got the potential to get to obviously millions, right, business wise, financially, etc. But obviously there's a gap toward before you get there, right? There's like some periods of you just try. You've got to build momentum.
Yeah. So I mean, essentially, I was doing my first business while I was still working.
Okay.
So during the hours that I could fit in during the day, I had started my other business. That was a retail and trade wholesale store that sold healthy and organic products, and I started that. And it boomed, and I was making at that point more money than I was in investment banking at the time and as an investment analyst at the time.
Yeah.
And that's when I really started to contemplate, right, where do I want to go in life? What do I really want to be doing? And that's when sort of my entrepreneurial journey started, and I left that role, and actually,
so Ben,
I had to make it
before leaving the role. You were making more money with your part-time business than with your full-time job, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was a big push for me to say, I'm going to go and try and do this full time, become a full time entrepreneur and business person, and I think it helped that I was making money, more money than I was in my job, definitely. But I think for anyone that's not, that maybe you need to invest full time in the job. I mean, I would say if you want to start a side hustle, as they call it, fine.
Yeah.
I say do it at the same time as the job you're currently doing, because a lot of the time the first business you start is not going to work.
Yeah.
You learn so much through your first business and through any other business you start from then that aren't successful. That it's maybe the third or fourth business you start that actually gets traction and actually works.
Is this the first business that you built, or the first one that was actually successful?
So this was almost the first business. I started a couple of other businesses, but about halfway through product development, I decided that the product wasn't any good, even though initially thinking it was. And I think that just got a better understanding of the market as I went on. After investing a few £1,000s in these projects, I just cut my losses and I said, no, I don't think these are going to work. And that's a really important thing for an entrepreneur to do. Some people are too proud to say that they can't be, they've not been successful. And I cut my losses and said, all right, I don't think this is going to work. And then I started at a business after that then led and was successful. And then it was sort of the platform for me to go on and build the portfolio of businesses I have now and do the acquisitions I've done now and all the other projects I've got going on. So
that's very cool.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So my background on that front to get to where I'm at, I found out throughout university I was trying quite a few businesses, to be honest. But I was like the typical kid that's always looking at the grass is green on the other side, and then I liked focus. That's what I liked. At that point in my life, at least. And I was also distracted with uni, and at that point, it's kind of like you've got too much going on. Um, but then I came to the realization that I wanted to build a business, try to do that, and then pretty much realized very soon that I lacked also some skill sets, right? So, how crucial do you think is the generation of skill sets in business before you make that jump? Because, like, only reason
Yeah,
why you got to that level in your e-commerce venture, right, before jumping into that full time, was because you had a few skill sets that you may have gained on the job. Would you consider that true,
absolutely,
or how do you feel about that?
absolutely. Yeah, that's very true. It's a very good point. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they may have had small businesses as they grew up. Maybe they were a kid and they started a small business, or they were in their teens and started a small business. I think anyone who's gone from a business where or a job role where they don't develop the kind of skills they need or they think they need, or just just to work or even start the business, I think it's so important to develop a sort of baseline of skills that every business person needs to have.
Yep.
Real basics of finance, accounting, marketing,
Yep.
product development, general business strategy,
Yep.
thinking about who you're going to be hiring next, how you're going to grow the business,
Yep.
competition, all of these kind of things. If you've never started a business before, then those things might not even come into your head. You might not even be thinking about those. And
Yep.
so, yes, being in the position I was, coming from the background I had, really helped.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I don't know how you would develop those skills otherwise. I think it's really just a matter of trial and error, and you go out there and you learn.
Yep.
You start a side hustle, it doesn't work. You start another one, it doesn't work,
Yep.
and then you learn each time. And I think
Yep.
you're never, as I say, you're never successful the first time.
Yep.
But developing those core skills is very important. And if you do have a mentor,
Yep.
like we talked about in our first podcast,
Yep.
if you do have a mentor, they will certainly help you with those skills along the way. They'll certainly tell you, these are the most important skills I've learned over my 10, 20 years in business. I will help you learn them. But if you can learn them, this will save you so much time
Yep.
and a lot of money going through doing your own thing. So yeah,
I think the thing is, like, you don't even know what you don't know, right? When you're trying to build something.
exactly. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and that really comes out when you may get like a job or a position where you're like properly learning and you feel like, holy shit, like how little did I know before doing this,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And let's move on from, we left school,
Mhm.
went into university. You dropped out from university.
I no, I finished. I managed to finish
Oh,
it.
you
Yeah,
finished. Oh, you finished. But it wasn't a priority.
no,
No, yeah, it was sort of, you weren't really focused on getting a good grade because
no,
to you it wasn't important.
no, not at all,
Yeah. So
not at all.
so for me, I mean, I actually, when I get into something, I really jump right in and I work really hard, and it sort of absorbs me and it takes up all my time. So when I was at university and I actually studied biological sciences or biology at university, so I wasn't an economics major or a finance major or accounting major or anything like that.
That's strange. Eh?
Yeah, and it's strange, and I love biology and I loved science in general. And I still do, and I still read about science and follow it. But in my third year, my final year at university, I was debating whether to go on and be a doctor. So I was very close to applying to do medicine,
Really?
and it was a close call between going to work in finance and between going to work in finance and to going to be a doctor. So it was very interesting that in the end I chose to go into finance, and I think
Why do you think?
always in the back of my head, I think always in the back of my mind, there was this idea that I wanted to be entrepreneurial and I wanted to start a business and build a business, and that was always in the back of my mind. And I knew that if I'd become a doctor, there's never that opportunity to be entrepreneurial. It's very difficult to be entrepreneurial as a doctor because doctors, that's just not what doctors are.
Yeah.
And I was very sure when I left university that whatever company I joined, I didn't want it to be bureaucratic. I wanted it to have a very flat structure. I wanted to be able to show my employer what I could do and really learn from everyone there. And fortunately, I was in both positions I took after university.
Yep.
There was a very flat structure. I was exposed to both the managing directors, the partners of the company, and and I learned a lot on the job. And I think after those two jobs, I was really just keen on going out there and starting my own business.
So
And
what were the two jobs? Can you go into them a bit more?
yes, so my first job after university was as a mergers and acquisition analyst, so an M&A analyst or an investment banker, as they would call them. I wasn't working for a big American investment bank.
Yeah.
I was working for a boutique firm.
Analyzing
was
accounts and so on like that. Like you were analyzing.
Yes, it was focused on China and UK cross-border transactions in technology and healthcare and industrial companies. So a lot of my work was revolved around analysing these companies, looking at the markets of these companies, generally private companies, and identifying whether these companies would be good acquisition targets, and then sort of developing a relationship with those companies to try and bring them across and introduce them to our Chinese partners. And at the time, it was going okay. And I think, as I've discussed before, I was really responsible for a lot of the sourcing, which is not typical for a first-year analyst who comes into investment banking. I mean, typically a first-year analyst role is essentially to be an Excel monkey. You get Excel, you get figures, you just bash those figures into Excel,
Yep.
And you do financial modeling pretty much your entire first 2 years.
Yep.
But for me, I was doing a combination of everything, and it was good, but it was bad because some of the things I wanted to learn more on were the partner's responsibility. So bringing in deals, sourcing new leads, that's kind of a senior level role, and it was difficult for me as an analyst to do that. So after about a year and a half there, I decided that I wanted to move across to an investment analyst role. I learned a lot on the job in terms of learning about financial models, business strategy, financial accounting, all of these kind of things. And going over to investment as an investment analyst, I was working as both as a fixed income investment analyst and an AIM company investment analyst. So there was smaller companies in the UK in the alternative investment market, and as fixed income. So I kind of got really two ends of the spectrum in the investment world, really learning about the macro economics with fixed income and sort of the company bottom up fundamental side. And I really liked my role there, really enjoyed it. I think after 6 months, I was sort of thinking, in the back of my mind as well, I was thinking, where am I going to go? Where's my next progression going to be? And I always thought, I wanted to start my own fund one day. I wanted to invest in public equities and really show people that I can invest, and I have been doing it for this long, and I'm very good at what I do. And so I got a bit of exposure to that when I was an AIM company analyst, and a lot of my results were better than the partners' results. So that kind of showed to me that I knew what I was doing. I was very understanding of the markets, and I had a real fundamental understanding and of what drove stock prices and these kind of things. So
you were that was just to recap. You were at this time thinking about, okay, I want ownership of my time, my business, and my reputation, essentially, right? Is that what you were thinking about at that point?
Essentially, I wanted to be in control, and although I was in a flat structure, I wanted to have. I did want to have my own. I'm not sure what to call it, business, but I wanted to have my own sort of autonomy, and I realized at that point in time that I could probably get there in 2 to 3 years. And I was like, I could get it in 2 to 3 years. But that's when I got sick. I unfortunately got quite unwell while I was there, and I told the company, I said, I'm I'm really suffering. I had to take some time off. And although I could have stayed at the company for a much longer period of time on sick, I decided, that it's better for the company. They've given me the opportunity to work here.
Yeah.
I don't want to let this company down. So I decided to just leave on my own accord and say, look, thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to leave. And it's almost like I had no choice but to start a business because I was not able to work full time at this point.
Yeah.
And so I had to get an income. I had to start a business. Otherwise, I'd be living at home with my parents or be on the streets or whatever. So this was the only option for me. And so there was no way that I could fail because there was no option for me to fail. And
so would you say your health issue was the tipping point that actually okay, now we've got to start our own thing like that? Now we're actually going to focus, or it was just like, well, got nothing else to do, let's try this. What was your mindset at that point?
It was kind of the former. I really thought, right, this is an opportunity now. I've always wanted to run my own business, and I've had it in my mind for the last 5 years at this point, and this was just the kick in the arse to say, all right, let's give it a go, let's see what happens. And it turns out that what I was doing and what I built and I was very good at what I was doing. So,
I think that's a tipping point, right? Like, there's people that may be going through like a tougher time right now, and it's just the way in which you look at that point when it's going to either catapult you up, and obviously that's happened to you right now, right? And we can go into that later on, or you can just be dull about it and feel sorry for yourself and just go flat line for your entire life and have that story about yourself, right? Because this is why I'm here, because of this.
I would say, I was really ill. So I was in bed. I was bedridden for nearly a year.
Wow.
I couldn't actually get out of bed for all the time. I had like debilitating fatigue where I couldn't move. It was like almost a permanent flu, and that didn't go away at all for a year.
Wow.
And the after effects of it are sort of still going on.
Yeah.
So not like you say, I could have said to my parents and to myself, I can't do this. I have to kind of accept where I am right now in my life, and just in the UK you can claim benefits for being not able to work, which at that point in time I was well within my rights to do. But I decided not to, and I decided, I'm going to give myself a chance. And I've always wanted to start a business, so let's go out and give it a go.
Nice.
And it's worked out really well. And I think the being sick has helped me, has pushed me to be more successful, because and as I've got better, at the time when I started, I was working maybe 1-2 hours a day, and now I'm working sort of minimum 8 hours a day. I'm on like 10 hours a day, and it really has pushed me to sort of what I achieved when I was sick compared to what I can achieve when I'm healthy, and the potential of people, and it's been really fun.
Nice. Yeah, so I met you. So just so that the audience knows, I met you when you were almost like halfway through your e-commerce journey, I would say, right? Or like 3/4 down that route.
So probably halfway. Probably halfway.
And at that point, we kind of met our paths journey, whatever you want to call that, on that front.
Yeah, and it was interesting because we met at an entrepreneurs event, and we kind of connected automatically. And I mean, we were the youngest people there as well. I mean, this entrepreneurs event was for people that were sort of in their successful business people in their 40s and 50s. There was a few in their 30s, but we were in our 20s, and we kind of hit it off. We were the youngest then. We were like, it's crazy that how young we are compared to everyone else. We almost couldn't do
you just connect with people that don't have a beard, right? So hey, I'm the same as
Exactly,
you.
yeah. Right. Oh, that guy's shit. That guy's no problem.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and we actually came up with the idea of starting a business together,
yeah,
and
yeah,
and it's actually what we're both doing now, but separately. So I think it's good to talk to the audience about this because it's quite important in that we're both very motivated, and now I would say people would consider us both very successful.
Mhm.
But at the time, we as a pair struggled to to make our business work, and we put that really fundamentally down to our age at the time
yeah,
and what businesses we were doing. I mean, we both had sort of businesses on the side, but where we wanted to go
yeah,
was building a portfolio of companies,
yeah,
working with funders and lenders around the UK, and bring in capital to build and acquire groups of companies.
yeah,
It's very difficult when there's two 20-something-year-olds
yeah,
approaching a 60-year-old owner of a
yeah,
£5 million business
yeah,
and saying, "Hey, can we buy your business?"
yeah,
It's very difficult for them to take you seriously. So
yeah,
I think we tried that for about a few months, and we just found that
yeah,
it wasn't really working, and we
yeah,
both came to the agreement that we need just some grey hair
yeah,
in our partnerships. So
yeah,
that's when I moved on, worked with someone, you moved on
yeah,
and worked with someone, and
yeah,
we're much better off now. And I still feel like to this day when I approach clients and when I talk to people that they are shocked about my age.
yeah.
I purposely don't shave a lot of the time when I turn up to meetings because they think I'm even younger if I don't shave. And even if they think I'm 30 or 35,
Yeah,
they still don't take you seriously because they think, well, how have you got the money to buy my business?
yeah, yeah,
And there's not a lot of people that do. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's and that's why I mentioned this skill set side of things. So when you're trying to build something, initially you may think that you know a lot, and you've started like successful businesses, or in your case, I think you did very well in e-commerce. Um, but then you realize that if you want to get to the next level or the next stage of your business, I guess life cycle, uh, there's some skill sets and some gaps that you need to fill, and you can either do it
yeah,
yourself or you can use outside help, mentors, partners, and so on in order to fill them.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. And I think if we try and push through to try and stay together as a partnership, I don't think it may have worked and it probably would have worked, but would we be where we are now?
later on,
I
yeah,
think we'd probably be only 20% of the way where we are now.
100%,
Um, and I think,
yeah,
again, if people go back and watch our first episode about mentorship, this is the importance of having a mentor and having a business partner who can really help you along the way,
yeah,
either by their reputation or by what they teach you,
yeah,
and you can develop the skills, and then you can go on and do it yourself in the future. But
yeah,
it is very important
yeah,
to get that base skill set.
100%. I mean, for me, it's been a pretty big life changer, to be honest. Like, it's just like night and day, what you're able to learn from people.
Yeah,
Especially people that have been there and worn it, right? So you want to be selective about who you're going to work with, because honestly, you're going to learn their skill sets, and if they haven't gotten to that level, you're not going to learn the skill sets because they don't have them, right?
yeah, exactly.
So you know, plus,
And so what are you doing right at this moment in time? That just sort of
yeah,
let people know, like, position wise, how many
yeah,
how many pies have you got your fingers in?
yeah. So good point. So I'm current. So I finished university. We tried to dabble on a couple of businesses. Didn't do too well on that front because we just didn't have the experience, track record, or whatever. From there, I moved on to management consulting. So started getting the grips and the mental structure around trying to improve businesses operationally, create like strategies on their international scale ups and so on.
And
Got
and just to butt in there,
yeah,
you did this all off your own accord. This was something that you did yourself. You didn't have
on,
any mentorship.
on the management consulting side, I work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did actually. So I
Oh, you
worked.
did? Okay.
Yeah, I worked with a small, I guess, boutique management consulting firm out of the Basque Country over in Spain. They had some decent clients. I was working at one point with like a 350 million turnover bus company on their international expansion, and we had to like create the projections, the presentation, internal presentation, so on. Typical with what you do at like EY, McKinsey, or these places. I learned to put in the hours. I learned the grips. But what I also learned is that you're not going to get very far if you don't own equity inside businesses, right? And that is where like I started reminding myself of the event that we went to, where you learn how to buy businesses and own them and receive dividends and so on. Which is when I was like very similar to you, Ben, trying to look for alternatives and trying to get out there and improve my, I guess, situation. And from there, what I did is try to add value to as many people as possible that were in the spot that I wanted to be in, for free, no favors asked, just questions and trying to offer value as much as possible all the time, which is to how I got to the place I'm at right now. So I'm currently, I guess, Chief Operations Officer, so like COO, at an investment firm called Opulente Capital, where we buy small, medium-sized enterprises. In between, I would say the biggest one we've done has been UK Salads, which is turning 51 million a year in turnover. So if you go to like Aldi, for example, or Tesco's in the UK, you're probably going to buy something that has been distributed by UK Salads. And then down to 2 million turnover companies, even 1 million turnover companies. That's on the one end with Opulentia. And then I've also got closing on the second equity stake inside two tech companies that have really cool projections, actually, like really interesting products and service offerings. They're confidential for now, but as time progresses with the podcast, I'll be happy to share that. So,
and you mentioned just before that you offered to work for free, just giving people value.
Yep, 100%.
And we talked about this before. People just seem to, if you offer someone something for free, they feel obliged to give you something back.
Yeah.
It's just human nature.
Yeah.
And so rather than say, I want this before giving you this value, if you give them the value, they're more willing to give you something back.
100%.
And I can't tell how many people listening to this now, how many entrepreneurs that don't, or people starting businesses that don't do that, because yes, at the beginning it's difficult because you won't be making any money, but a year's time, those clients are going to be with you, and possibly even paying clients.
Yep.
And once you have your first few paying clients, then everything else is exponential from there.
100%. And it's kind of like, I think you've seen it yourself, definitely yourself, the compound effect. So, like, if you are consistent and if you are focused and you keep track and you make the repetitions that you need to make for your own industry, like, your results will compound. And so will your compensation, to be honest.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's kind of very similar to me. When I sort of joined forces with my current business partner, we started an investment acquisition and consulting company, which essentially invested and consulted in small and medium-sized enterprises in the UK, and also acquired businesses from people looking to exit their business, essentially providing business owners exits and opportunities. I mean, that's how we describe ourselves.
Yeah.
And there's a lot. The SME space is very underserved.
Yeah.
And we just found that there's a lot of companies that were good quality companies, but just weren't run as effectively as we think they could have been. And so that just, to us, meant that we wanted to jump in, and there was a market there for us.
Yep.
And it's doing really well. And at the same time, we build.
For the audience, what are you guys called? Global.
We call Global Partners. Yeah, so they can have a look at us. But we build businesses as well. So we're not sort of focused on one particular area. We don't just focus on investing. We don't just focus on acquiring. We don't focus on consulting. We do all of them. And we also build businesses from scratch. If we come up with a good idea, we use our network and our employees and the people we have good connections with to build those businesses up. And
What would
and yeah, we've been very successful so far.
what would you say, Ben, is the most I guess what would you say is your unique specialty, right? And I think within your website at Global Partners for Capital, you guys like have the fact that you come into a business that are in a specific situation and they try and take them to the next stage, right, of the business life cycle.
Yeah, so I mean, there generally, if you're a business owner and you own a business with revenues between 1 and 50 million, the private equity market is not really that interested in you. Trade buyers may be interested in you, but they are few and far between,
Yeah.
and it might take you a long time to if you want to exit,
Yeah.
it might be years until the right trade buyer comes in to purchase you. And so what my partner and I decided and discovered was that we could offer that exit.
Yeah.
And we've developed really good relationships with investors and funders who help us to invest and buy those businesses
Yeah.
and work with those business owners to give them that retirement and make sure that the business is in safe hands after the sale. And I think that's one of the most important aspects for business owners when they sell their business, in that, yes, they want the right amount of money, they want that safe retirement, or they want that safe sort of cash extraction, but also they want to know that the business, their baby that they've built up over the last however many years, is going to continue for the foreseeable future, and it will still be around in 5, 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do, and we buy long-standing businesses and businesses that we know are going to be around, that we can add a lot of value to, we can build on, we can grow. And what we've done in only 18 months now is, excluding add-on acquisitions, our group has grown revenue by over 100% in 18 months. And that's a fantastic stat. It really is. It means it's a testament to how hard and how well our team are working at building these businesses and the strategies that we're implementing in these businesses. And we're not passive investors. We get very involved in those businesses, and we come up with some very good ideas of how to grow them and very good strategy on what we think they should be doing and what each managing director of the businesses should be doing. We've put in our own reporting processes, and from those reporting processes, we come up with targets and solutions and ways of improving the business. And all of this together has resulted in us growing the businesses substantially. And I think if you talk to all of the previous owners of the businesses, they come back to us and they say, wow, I mean, what you've done is amazing. I would never have been able to do this. Although it's not in a benefit of them now that we've bought the business, it's more that they're happy that with the people that they've passed their business on to.
So just to make this clear for the audience, let's say you've bought a business that's making 2 million in annual revenue, right? And say 500,000 net profit, which would be like a really interesting business. You guys, through your methods, have been able to get that past 4 million and 1 million net profit within a year. Is that correct?
Within 18 months, pretty much,
18 months. Just through organic growth,
just through organic growth. So that's no bolt-on acquisitions. That's just pure organic growth. Yeah, I mean that's just bringing in the right people, implementing the right strategies. Modernizing the business, transforming the business, and I really love what we do, and I really enjoy it, because seeing that effect is so rewarding for me. When we bring in more employees, we grew a company from sort of 10 employees to 25 employees. We brought in a sales team, worked with a new managing director, and brought in a finance manager. We were able to hire more manufacturers, and I think that to me that's great. These people don't have a job otherwise. Some of them are not working. Others are not satisfied with the jobs they're doing. So we're really giving these people a new purpose, and being part of something that is really fun and interesting and enjoyable to be part of. And with the way we run our businesses, we as long as people work very hard,
Yep.
and they are rewarded for working very hard.
Yep.
At the same time, we don't we value all of our employees, and we give them what they want, because we know that employees are
Yep.
really the most important people in the businesses,
100%.
and having the right employees transforms the business.
Yep.
So, yeah,
Yep.
that's one of our
Nice.
one of our key things we do.
Yeah, it's very similar to what we do. So, I mean, we would be looking at buying a company, and then similar to what Ben mentioned, trying to improve the strategy of it and look at bolt-on acquisitions. I guess something that's really interesting for those out there that are looking at the SME market is when you bolt on acquisitions across the group, you have that ability to cross-sell, upsell, downsell, improve like the cost structure of that business, incentivize management teams, create like better opportunity vehicles for the employees. So as a whole, it really improves the overall look of businesses. And it's a really interesting moment to be in history, I would say.
Yeah.
Based on the
Absolutely.
demographic cliff and stuff.
I mean, essentially, what we're doing is we are like. I mean, I don't like to consider ourselves private equity companies, because I think private equity is quite a bad name in a lot of companies. A lot of private equity companies over leverage deals.
Yeah.
They load on loads of debt, and then they are forced to rapidly expand or rapidly cut costs from a business.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the time it doesn't work out, but they need to have a very high growth to justify the valuation they're paying for these businesses, and also to give the private equity investors that exit.
Yeah.
Because they rely on that 5 to 10 year time horizon to get a initial rate of return to the investors that put the equity in, so that they want to see their money out at some point. And so to do that, they have to over leverage, and they have to find ways to grow the business. And sometimes it's maybe not the most ethical, and maybe not in the best interests of the employees and the best interests of the local community. So the way that we approach a lot of our investments is that unless you're slacking and you shouldn't be working at the company in the first place, your job is completely safe. There's no way or no reason that we would remove any employees that are working hard and doing well in the business. What we want to do is grow the business, so we want to hire more employees, and we want to even take the current employees and see are they satisfied, work with the current employees to find out what extra things we can be doing for them to make them happier, and of course give ourselves the opportunity to have a good quality business and take some good profits from that business. And so there's definitely an underserved market at the moment, and we're taking advantage of that.
And so we've touched on the past, right? We've touched on like the brief present of what we're doing right now. Just so that we can keep ourselves accountable with the audience. Where do you see yourself in the next year, next 12 months? Any goals
next 12 months
that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, so I think we'd like to. I'd like to get to a point where I had a portfolio of companies and properties of 100 million. Now that's a massive ask. I know. But I think you've got to set big targets, and if you get close to those targets, then I think that would be somewhat of a success.
That's for the next year.
But that is my target
for the next year.
For the next year,
So,
and I think if we look further down the line, 5 years. In 5 years, I think I'd like to be in a position where we have a big portfolio of SMEs. We are renowned in our field across Europe as a really good quality management team who offer really great solutions for exits and opportunities for business owners, and that people who want to sell the business, want to work with an experienced partner, or maybe want investment, come to us because we are that name that can always help and always offer solutions.
Yeah.
I think that's the goal. I mean, a non-monetary goal really, but just to be the name that people think of when they say, are you looking at sort of getting an investor on board, or are you looking at selling that business, or are you looking to work with an experienced partner to help you? And then they think, okay, I am, but who can they think of? I want them to think of us. So that would be a really good goal.
Yeah. Funny enough, it's one of the same goals that I've got all for this year. So we want to make 100 million in transactions, either by buying business or selling. So we should have, I would say, 30 million done by May. So we're on the hunt for the other 70 by the end of the year. So same goals for the next year, and then 3 to 10 years down the line, very similar to what you're thinking. To be honest, I don't want to really share what my net worth goals are, but I guess my 10-year timeline is going to be pretty substantial if I want to get to that point. So I think that's a chat for another day. What do you think, Ben? We'll keep the audience with with a bit of intrigue around that.
Yeah. So I mean, this podcast has been a little bit longer than the others, but I think Matthew and I thought it was very important that we told people, and so where we're coming from, and so when you listen to our podcast in the future, where we are in our lives and how we got here and our upbringing. Just know a little bit more about us personally, because we'd like to develop a community here of people who regularly watch our podcasts, and we can provide value to, and that they can approach us and we can give them the advice that we've had throughout our lives, and hopefully together we can help each other. So
exactly. Cool, guys. Thanks a lot for listening.
All right, well, we'll catch you up again tomorrow.
Yep. See you later, guys. Bye.
See you later.